Christmas collision, single dad's blind date with the CEO, until the ex-wife shows up. The champagne glass slipped from Sarah's manicured fingers, shattering against the marble floor of the upscale restaurant just as her eyes locked with Mike's across the room. He wasn't supposed to be here, not with her. And certainly not with Lily, their daughter, smiling up at the stunning blonde woman whose hand rested comfortably on Mike's arm. 3 years of silence, and this is how Sarah would reunite with her family? But what nobody at that Christmas Eve dinner knew was that by midnight, one of them would be making a life-changing decision that would alter all their destinies forever. Mike Jenkins tugged nervously at his collar, wondering for the 10th time if agreeing to this blind date was the worst decision he'd made since signing those divorce papers. The restaurant was way too fancy for his budget, but his buddy Dave had insisted this was the perfect place to meet Alexis Morgan. "Daddy, do I look pretty?" 6-year-old Lily twirled in her red Christmas dress, the one he'd spent an hour ironing that morning. The prettiest girl in all of Chicago, Pumpkin. He smiled, though his stomach was doing somersaults. "Remember what we talked about? Best behavior tonight, okay? This is important to Daddy." What he couldn't tell his daughter was just how important. Meeting the CEO of Morgan Enterprises wasn't just a blind date, it was potentially his ticket out of financial ruin. The construction company he'd built from scratch was on the verge of bankruptcy after his biggest client pulled out last month. If things clicked with Alexis, who was looking for a contractor for her company's expansion project. The hostess led them to a corner table where a woman sat alone, her blonde hair cascading over shoulders draped in a simple yet elegant black dress. When she looked up, Mike nearly tripped over his own feet. Dave had mentioned she was attractive, but this woman was breathtaking. "You must be Mike," she said, standing to shake his hand. Her eyes crinkled warmly as she bent down to Lily's level. "And you must be the famous Lily I've heard about. Are you a princess?" Lily asked, wide-eyed. Alexis laughed, a sound like silver bells. "No, sweetie. Just a woman who works too much." As they settled in, Mike found himself relaxing. Alexis was nothing like he'd expected a CEO to be. She was down-to-earth, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in his stories about raising Lily alone. "So how does a single dad end up running his own construction company?" she asked, sipping her wine. "Stubbornness, mostly," he admitted. "After the divorce, I needed something that was mine, you know? Something I built with my own hands." What Mike didn't see was the woman who had just entered the restaurant, stopping dead in her tracks as she spotted them. Sarah Jenkins had returned to Chicago after 3 years in New York, determined to make things right with Mike and Lily this Christmas. Her therapist had finally helped her understand that postpartum depression hadn't made her a bad mother, it had made her human. But nothing had prepared her for seeing her ex-husband on what was clearly a date, with their daughter looking happier than Sarah had ever seen her. The champagne glass slipped from her fingers, and the crash made heads turn throughout the restaurant. "Mommy?" Lily's voice cut through the sudden silence. Mike's face drained of color. "Sarah?" Alexis Morgan, CEO of a billion-dollar company and supposedly immune to awkward situations, suddenly felt like the unwitting star of a reality TV drama. I should go," Sarah stammered, backing away, tears welling in her eyes. "Mommy!" Lily broke free from the table, running across the restaurant and throwing her arms around Sarah's waist. "You came back. Just like I wished on my Christmas star." Mike stood frozen, 1,000 emotions battling for dominance. Anger at the woman who'd walked out on them. Relief that Lily's heartbreak might finally heal. And confusion about what this meant for the connection he'd just begun to feel with Alexis. What he didn't know was that Alexis had her own secrets, including why she'd really arranged this blind date with a struggling contractor whose company she'd been considering for acquisition, not partnership. As the snow fell outside, coating Chicago in a blanket of white, for lives collided in a Christmas Eve tangle of past regrets and future possibilities. And the night was just beginning. 3 hours later, Mike stood on his apartment balcony, watching the snow fall and trying to make sense of everything. The dinner had somehow continued, with Sarah joining their table in a surreal foursome that had Lily beaming with joy and the adults navigating a conversational minefield. "She's asleep," Alexis said softly, stepping onto the balcony and handing him a mug of hot chocolate. "Sarah's reading her a second bedtime story." "I still can't believe you invited her back here," Mike said, shaking his head. "It's Christmas Eve, Mike. And that little girl in there just got her Christmas miracle." Alexis leaned against the railing. "Besides, I think we all needed to talk." "About what?" "How my ex-wife abandoned us. Or how you neglected to mention that your company has been buying up struggling construction firms all over the Midwest." Alexis winced. "I deserve that. But for what it's worth, after meeting you and Lily tonight, I was going to offer you a legitimate contract, not a buyout." Inside, Sarah closed the storybook, watching Lily's peaceful sleeping face. How had she convinced herself she could live without this? The depression that had consumed her after Lily's birth had twisted everything, made her believe they were better off without her. Now, seeing the beautiful little person her daughter had become, Sarah felt the full weight of what she'd missed. "She has your smile," Mike said from the doorway. Sarah looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Mike, I know I don't deserve forgiveness." "You're right. You don't." His voice was hard, but then he sighed, the anger deflating. "But Lily deserves her mother. And I'm tired of hating you." What none of them realized was that tomorrow morning would bring a Christmas Day revelation that would force them all to decide what family really means, and whether some broken things are worth rebuilding. Christmas morning dawned with Lily bouncing on Mike's bed at 6 a.m., her excitement uncontainable. "Daddy! Daddy! Santa came and Mommy's still here and Miss Alexis made pancakes." Mike groaned, rubbing his eyes. After their balcony conversation, Alexis had offered to take the couch, insisting Sarah stay in the guest room. The arrangement felt bizarre, but somehow, right. In the kitchen, he found Sarah and Alexis working side by side, an unexpected truce formed in the early morning hours. "Merry Christmas," Alexis said, flipping a pancake shaped like a snowman. Sarah handed him coffee. "We, talked. A lot." Before Mike could respond, Lily tugged them all toward the Christmas tree. "Presents time." As Lily tore through her gifts, Mike noticed something he hadn't seen before, a small envelope tucked into the tree branches. Inside was a check that made his eyes widen, along with a note in Alexis's handwriting, "For your company. Not a buyout, an investment. I believe in you." He looked up to find Alexis watching him nervously. "Why?" he asked. "Because sometimes people deserve second chances," she said, her eyes flicking meaningfully toward Sarah, who was helping Lily with a new toy. Sarah caught his gaze and stood, pulling something from her pocket. "I have something for you too," she said quietly, handing him a folded paper. It was her acceptance letter to Chicago Memorial Hospital's residency program. "I'm moving back," she explained. "Not to disrupt your lives, but to be near Lily. To try to make amends, if you'll let me." Mike looked between the two women, one offering him professional salvation, the other seeking personal redemption. And in that moment, surrounded by Christmas lights and his daughter's laughter, he realized that sometimes life's collisions aren't endings. They're new beginnings. 6 months later, Mike's company was thriving with Alexis's investment. Sarah had become a steady presence in Lily's life, rebuilding trust one day at a time. And Alexis, well, that was complicated in the best possible way. "Daddy says you're his girlfriend now," Lily informed Alexis as they decorated cupcakes for the 4th of July. Alexis blushed. "Your daddy talks too much." "Mom says it's okay because you make him happy," Lily continued, concentrating on placing sprinkles in a perfect line. "And because you helped fix his broken heart. Sometimes the most unexpected collisions lead us exactly where we need to be." Not to the life we planned, but to the one waiting for us all along. If you felt something watching this story, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that remind us second chances are the greatest gift of all. From which country are you watching? Drop it in the comments below and let us know if you've ever experienced your own holiday miracle.